Previously on Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Don Zalug walkened so Yuki Judai could Jade run, and all of the heroes lost their spirit keys to the dumbest possible people in the world before ultimately murdering them via Ojama King Body Splash and retrieving the keys after the fact. Sacred Beast cards must be sweating their asses off knowing these guys are the ones in charge of keeping them safe. Anyway, now we're done with that silly comic relief Saturday Night Live bullshit. And we're on to episode 40 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX entitled A Lying Legend, which starts off inside a dimly lit chamber where a hushed reverence falls as masked servants wearing Egyptian-themed apparel awaken a man from his resting place within an ancient sarcophagus. Yes, this is serious Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff right here. No more goofing around with Ojama spirits and robot monkeys. It's time for Yu-Gi-Oh! GX to get its drama on. Oh, and the guy sounds like this.
Why has my slumber been disrupted?
Never mind, it turns out this week's guest villain is Tiny Tim. You know, things that bother you never bother him. He feels happy and fine. Haha. An off-screen voice, presumably Night Shroud, tells Tiny Timton Carmen that he has to fulfill his duty to the shadows. Tim commands them to ready his vessel, and I honestly half expect them to get like an ancient Egyptian-themed baby carriage for him. We must prepare His Majesty's holy pacifier and his royal blankie. Speaking of things guaranteed to lull babies into a sound sleep, the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX opening theme happens. Why isn't there a lo-fi version of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Soundtrack anyway? Never mind music to duel by, give me some music to snooze by. We can't let Pokemon corner the market on unnecessary sleep aid-based tie-ins. In class, Banner is showing everyone some very funny sketches of Yami Yugi and Seto Kaiba, and I'm like 90% convinced we hear a cameo by Joey Wheeler when Kaiba's face is shown.
You all know Yugi Moto and Seto Kaiba.
Banner says that these two guys were the best duelists of their generation, and two girls in the class speak on behalf of the entire internet fandom and talk about how they're both super hot. Then one person interjects with,
I like my Valentine.
They really need to stop letting Manny the philosophy teacher sit in on classes when he's on break. It makes for awkward situations like this. Sad, lonely fellow. You'd have to be choosing to teach philosophy at card game school and all. Banner says there were other great duelists before Yugi and Kaiba, and Jaden is confused until Cyrus explains that they played Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in ancient Egypt. You've got to imagine Kaiba pitched the biggest fit when they started adding this to the school curriculum. No! Stop lending credence to Yugi's fantasies about Egyptian pharaohs. It's all baloney. Why aren't we teaching kids about the importance of dragons and mythology and also real life? Specifically my real life. Banner says the best player way back in ancient Egypt was, you guessed it, the Pharaoh. No, not Atem, but this dude, Abydos III. I love that we're treating his being good at a game as historical fact, when he was the bloody pharaoh and could have said, also I had more sex than anyone else who ever lived, and everyone thinks I'm really cool, and people would have written that down in the scriptures too. Speaking of which, somebody add to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan wiki that I've had more sex than anyone else who's ever lived and everyone thinks I'm really cool, please. Just in case anyone's learning about me in some YouTube-based school system in the distant future. Jaden says he would have kicked that pharaoh's ass if he was still around, and Chaz casts some doubt upon it. Jaden responds with his typical brand of impenetrably upbeat enthusiasm, and this leads to Chaz yanking him by the ears repeatedly. I know he's small, shrill, and annoying, Chaz, but he's not a Ferengi. Banner notices them roughhousing and gives them detention, and Cyrus says,
Oh man, 5th time this week.
This sort of implies that they've gotten detention literally every school day, and if I were to guess why, it'd be because they keep trying to summon things in defense mode, despite it being lesson number 1 that they can't. Zane meets up with Alexis at Willem Dafoe's house, and Alexis vents to Zane, who is such a good listener.
I thought having my brother back would make everything okay again, but it seems like there's even more questions than ever now. And then with these Shadow Riders? I just don't know what to do, Zane.
Yeah.
Seems like you should know what to do since it's the one thing you guys do every single episode, which is play card games until the problem magically goes away. Zane says, don't worry, you're safe right now, and then reality chooses to spite him as from out of nowhere there appears a horde of ghoulish mummies lifted straight from Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie. Remember when Taya kicked that dude's head off? That was great. Doesn't happen here, sadly. Gotta save that good stuff for the theaters. Cyrus, Chaz, and Jaden are heading back to the dorm, and Cyrus complains that
I spend more time in detention than I do in class. My mom's not gonna be happy.
Meanwhile, Jaden is like, wait, you have parents? And they have expectations of you? That's weird. You're weird, Cyrus. Having a mom and all? Weirdo? Chaz reacts to all the Bastion gags from my GX videos.
Okay, the joke's old!
A whole cargo train passes in between the pause in Cyrus's sentence fragments.
At least, things can't get worse.
The trio spot Alexis and Zane being threatened by reanimated corpses, and then they too find themselves beset by the walking dead. Then there's a blinding beam of golden light as what looks like a spaceship with a sexy fish lady on its undercarriage floats down toward them. This is a bizarre retelling of The Little Mermaid, but at least we're not being subjected to Aquafina singing The Scuttlebutt. The voice of Pharaoh Abydos emanates from the craft with all the confidence of a guy asking himself where he left his keys.
Duelists?
Jaden passes out and regains consciousness on the ancient Egyptian UFO. The others are sat to one side staring at him, so presumably Jaden was the only one to get knocked out by this process. Might not have even been related. He probably was scared of being indirectly educated by this experience and went into nap mode. Professor Banner is there too, and he explains those mummies found him and brought him here. Pharaoh the cat has also tagged along. Bruh, this is the biggest and most airborne litter box I've had the pleasure of pooping in. I can feel the wind in my whiskers. Finally, someone appreciates my standards. Meow. They spot Abydos reclining in his giant ovular throne, and he says,
Hello there.
Look, you can try to do a silly voice, but given that this episode is following on from Don Zaloog, you'd have to be Eddie Redmayne in Jupiter Ascending levels of goofy to make a dent in people's expectations. Professor Banner faints, and there's a funny moment where everyone is like, what's his problem? Which is great when you take into account just how absurd this situation is, and yet seems entirely normal in the context of GX. Jaden cops an attitude with Abydos, and Abydos says that's not the way to address an Egyptian pharaoh. Chaz exclaims he looks just like the picture Banner shared in class today. Look, Banner drew a vague shape with pharaoh-like costuming. It would be hard for the guy not to look like the picture. The gang deduces that this guy is a shadow rider, and Abydos calmly explains that they should leave their spirit keys and go, because they don't want to duel him. Special shout out to his ancient Egyptian slippers. They look as comfy as they are unnecessary. Jaden enthusiastically requests a duel against the pharaoh to show him how they duel in the 21st century. Which is funny because in a few years, Jaden's method of dueling is going to seem just as archaic and forgotten as the ancient Egyptian way. The others try to discourage Jaden, saying this guy's undefeated. Jaden says that once he wins, he'll be the legend. And even though in ancient Egyptian times it would have been against the law to catchphrase at the pharaoh, Jaden throws caution to the wind.
So get your game on! My game is always on.
Well, that's gonna drain the charge on your Game Boy, mate. You're gonna want to plug it into the wall at least. Chaz throws Jaden Cyrus's dual disc, and Cyrus says,
Hey, that dual disc looks just like mine!
You're probably thinking, well, of course, all dual discs look the same, Cyrus. But no, his has a special Dark Magician Girl decal with her boobies out that 4Kids and the original Japanese version both had to censor out because it was in poor taste. We see once again that Jaden and Abydos are dueling atop a giant golden fish woman floating in space. This is, of course, the only verb Jaden is ever likely to do upon a woman's back. Abydos has a cool, ancient Egypt-themed dual disc with like a scarab beetle that holds the cards and shit. It's awesome. No notes. It sucks to know that it's probably the only time we'll get to see it. Abydos summons a card in defense and activates the first sarcophagus. And when Jaden doesn't seem bothered by this play, Abydos encourages all the monster fuckers out there to indulge in their kink.
Put your monsters where your mouth is.
Jaden summons Avion in attack mode and follows up with,
Yo, Jimmy, hit me with that Triple H.
Avion attacks Pharaonic Protector, and with piercing, Abydos takes a full 1500 points of damage. You had one job, Pharaonic Protector. It's in your name. Literally one job. Abydos makes a comeback using Tribute to the Doomed to eliminate Avion and attacking with Pharaoh's Servant. He scoffs at Jaden's skills, and Jaden comes back with,
Give us present day peeps some credit.
Not if they say things like present day peeps, I won't. Take credit away from them for saying that shit, if anything. Jaden plays and brings out Speak Me! Speak Me! Speak Me! Jaden activates the R card and somehow isn't disqualified despite it not being Talk Like a Pirate Day, and before he can destroy the first sarcophagus, Abydos counters with Magic Jammer. Jaden calls the attack and Sparkman blasts onto the back of a giant golden woman. Can't tell who I'm more jealous of. Abydos suddenly breaks down and insists Jaden shouldn't be allowed to attack him. Jaden is perplexed and Abydos repeats that this can't happen. He's Abydos, the greatest duelist ever.
The greatest? I'm not so sure about that.
But isn't that what they were just teaching you in class? The theme song lyrics need to be revised. It's not back at class they never taught us this. It's got to be changed to back at class I didn't absorb this information. Jaden and Cyrus take turns explaining that for someone so legendary, Abydos's cards are kinda lame.
Yeah, his cards are hardly better than a starter deck. For a legend, this guy is a bit of a letdown.
This is the exact same reaction I get when people pop into my Master Duel streams and they realize I have no idea what I'm doing. Isn't this the Yu-Gi-Oh guy? Why is he bad at Yu-Gi-Oh? Abydos flashes back to his youth before he decided to start wearing facial accessories, and we are shown a montage of even tinier Tim laying out each of his servants one after the other with basic monster attacks. Not shown is how he's doing this without the Millennium items, but hey, I'm sure there's no time to explain any of that. There's card games to play. Then we get a clip of Abydos's servants gossiping behind his back. Or in front of his back? He seems to remember it happening anyway.
You know, I'm getting really sick and tired of having to lose to this spoiled brat every time.
But if we don't, he'll probably feed us to the lions.
Sadly, this flashback doesn't give Abydos the idea to feed Jaden to the lions. He instead just comes to a realization that he was being allowed to win all the time. Chaz remarks,
Wow, what a giant loser this guy is.
"Not even 5 minutes since these guys were abducted by a space pharaoh from planet Helium and they've already started dragging him. Way to Chaz him down in the prime of his afterlife, Chaz."
You know what? I wouldn't mind having some servants like that.
But his whole life has been a lie.
Don't care, Alexis. I want servants. Also, wait, just because he wasn't good at a game, it doesn't mean his whole existence is a lie. Holy shit. For all you know, he had a very active social life and perhaps he invented the cummerbund. But no, he was rubbish at Uno, so he's basically the talented Mr. Ripley. Things take a turn for the wholesome as Jaden encourages Abydos to take his first duel lesson from him. So it's time to get your ancient Egyptian game on. Jaden tells Abydos to
take that ridiculous thing off.
And we see that, yeah, this is just Pharaoh Abydos, no trick or anything. I guess if we can accept a sexy vampire lady exists, we can allow a handsome Egyptian king. I feel like maybe a little more effort could have been spared to explain exactly how he's around in modern times, but it's fun. Abydos finally activates all 3 sarcophagi to summon Spirit of the Pharaoh in attack mode.
Spirit of the who? What?
Oh, come on, Jaden. You're clearly aware of what a pharaoh is at this point in the episode. What the f*** are you trying to pull right now? This is like when Doctor Strange went Illumawati in a Multiverse of Madness. It only happened so I could be pissed off about it. Well, mission accomplished, Jaden, Yuki, and Doctor Strange from Multiverse of Madness. Spirit of the Pharaoh materializes in a sarcophagus and stands up, dressed from head to toe in ornate armor that looks quite impressive. And he's joined by 4 level 2 zombie servants from Abydos's graveyard. Jaden activates
Go, Invincible Hero!
and for one turn, Sparkman cannot be destroyed. Abydos continues to rain punishment down on Sparkman, however, and the excess damage is all transferred to Jaden one attack after the other. Jaden responds by summoning Elemental Hero Clayman, and then he activates and before you can play that funky trumpet, he brings back Elemental Hero Aviard from the Gravion. I mean, you know what I mean. Anyway, now that Jaden has played his H, his E, his R, and his O card, they all combine to activate Elemental Hero Bastinatrix is summoned so you can all stop blade edging, and all of Jaden's heroes team up to attack Abydos directly, with the attack move Hero Flash. What I wouldn't give to be flashed by Jaden's heroes. Jaden defeats Abydos with a rainbow-themed final blow, Happy Pride, and then he compliments his opponent.
That's game! And a pretty good one, too! You've got moves!
I think I counted like maybe 2 moves. Chaz name drops my favorite Garfield video game.
Big fat hairy deal.
Abydos confesses he used to think he was the best duelist of all time, but now he knows he needs a lot of practice in order to be a true legend. Jaden says, hey, anytime, and Abydos says bet, and immediately invites Jaden back to his kingdom, where he'll be offered power and fame and anything his heart desires. Golden egg witches as far as the eye can see, and everyone's butts will be thicker than a Stephen King novel. Cyrus and Chaz have differing reactions to the idea of Jaden going to heaven or whatever is being suggested.
Jaden, wait! You can't leave!
Sweet, so I will get his room.
Chaz!
Okay, why would you want his room though? It's riddled with Chumley smell. And it comes with Chumley, who is also riddled with Chumley smell. Jaden politely declines and then follows up with,
But hey, drop me a line if you're ever in my head, okay?
Jaden is so lucky that Abydos has no concept of cringe, let alone what a hood is supposed to be referencing. All of this sounds equally dumb to him.
Same with you. That is, if you ever find a time vortex warping loophole.
Jaden is a time vortex warping loophole. He's a 90s kid written to sound like he's from the 1980s living in the 2000s. He is the walking contradiction Green Day once warned us of. Abydos and his half spaceship, half lady disappear from our reality, which has got to be a real blow to Night Shroud's morale, watching his lackey almost make out with Jaden and then voluntarily f*** off. Shadow Riders must be asking themselves if it's even worth riding the shadows at this point. Our heroes all walk off together and Jaden comments that he's been gathering quite a collection from his opponents, indicating the trinket he got from Abydos.
But where's the Shadow Rider with a skateboard?
You've jinxed it, Jaden. Next episode, your opponent's gonna be Tony Hawk Pro Shadow Rider. As the group heads dawnwards, a fair distance away, Professor Banner watches them go while speaking an ominous warning, indicating that Jaden's going to face his true test soon enough. Yeah, it's just his super dramatic way of saying he's gonna beat Jaden at tomorrow's Wordle puzzle. And that's the end of the episode. It's funny going back and forth between the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters and GX because even though they totally belong in the same franchise, there's a massive tonal whiplash when watching them at the same time. This episode especially because it dives headfirst into Duel Monsters references by immediately evoking ancient Egypt and a pharaoh specifically. Not to mention how you have Banner waving around fan art of Kaiba and Yugi. There's a part of me as a result that wants to whinge and moan about how GX makes no real effort to tie any of these ideas into the previously established narrative of Duel Monsters. For example, I could spend time complaining that none of the characters even reference Pharaoh Atem or raise any questions about the origins of Duel Monsters. But look, at this point, I've surrendered entirely to the GX vibe and have accepted that this show isn't interested in fleshing out old Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff and is far more interested in having fun with new ideas and characters, which is great. I kinda had the realization watching this episode that the tone of the series is the same as that of its protagonist. For as far as Jaden's concerned, all of this is a big cartoon adventure, and darn it, he's right. Which is why it's so appropriate that this Pharaoh character we meet in Abydos is the exact antithesis of Yami Yugi's unbeatable nature. He's a child playing with toys with no understanding of what makes the game fun. It's the perfect foil for both your expectations of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Story and for Jaden's whole deal. This show is full of silly billies, and I'm about it, is ultimately what I'm saying. I want to take a moment to thank all of our supporters over at the LittleKuriboh Patreon. If I could ride over to you personally on a golden lady spaceship like Abydos has, I would. But you'll have to accept my sincerest gratitude from across the realms of the internet for lack of a space-time vortex loophole or whatever it was. Thank you to each and every one of you. That's it for this one, but tune in to my next video for yet another Abydos of GX. I'll catch you next time.
The Illuminati. We'll see you now.
Spirit of the who? What?